You're not weak, you're repressed. I know, that's not what you've been told. The world wants you to believe that your constant anxiety is a flaw, a sign that you're broken, fragile, maybe even hopeless. But what if I told you that everything you've been taught about anxiety is a lie? That beneath the racing thoughts, the tight chest, the restless nights, there is no weakness, only unacknowledged strength trapped inside your shadow. You see, most of us were never taught how to feel. We were taught how to cope, to survive, to repress. And so we carry within us a vault of unprocessed emotions: anger, grief, shame, fear, locked away where no one can see them. But the psyche is wise. What is repressed does not vanish. It waits, building pressure until it can no longer be contained. And when it breaks through, it feels like anxiety. You are not failing. Your soul is signaling. It's asking, begging, for healing and integration. Here's the truth no one tells you. Your anxiety is not an enemy to be fought. It's a guide, a map pointing you to the parts of yourself that have been hidden in the dark. And when you begin to see it this way, everything changes. You stop fearing the symptoms. You start understanding the message. And in that understanding lies the first taste of inner peace. But how do you begin this journey? How do you move from fear to curiosity, from repression to freedom? That's exactly what we're going to uncover today. And once you see the path, you may never look at your anxiety the same way again. Most people grow up believing that feeling anxious is a sign of weakness, a personal failure. But that's a shallow and unfair view. Carl Jung saw it clearly. Anxiety is often a symptom, a muffled cry from emotions that have been buried and rejected throughout life. It's not weakness, it's an inner alarm. Think of a pressure cooker. If you keep turning up the heat without releasing steam, it will eventually explode. That's exactly what happens in the human mind when repression builds up over time. Every emotion we ignore or deny, from a small resentment to deep trauma, stores energy that must find a way out. And when we don't allow it to surface in a healthy way, it manifests as anxiety, this constant state of inner tension that robs us of inner peace and keeps us trapped in the mind's endless loop. Picture a man who grew up hearing from his father that real men don't cry. As a child, he learned to suppress fear, sadness, even tenderness. Years later, he becomes a rigid adult, unable to relax, plagued by panic attacks and a constant sense of unease. Why? Because those emotions never disappeared. They were pushed deep into his shadow. Jung taught that what we reject in ourselves doesn't vanish. It becomes part of the shadow, and sooner or later, it returns. This man is not weak, quite the opposite. His anxiety reveals how long he has been forced to be too strong, too silent, while his inner wounds remained unhealed. A common mistake today is to treat anxiety as an enemy to be quickly silenced, with distractions, with shallow fixes. Jung teaches us the opposite. Anxiety is a messenger. It points us toward what has been repressed, toward forgotten parts of our psyche that are crying out for healing. The first step is to change how we see it. Next time you feel that tightness in your throat or that weight in your chest, don't ask, "What's wrong with me?" Instead, ask, "What inside me is trying to speak?" That simple shift opens the door to real self-awareness. No one chooses to repress emotions on purpose. It's a defense mechanism that forms early in life. When certain emotions were punished or ignored, we locked them away to survive. But that psychological vault isn't pressure-proof. As we grow older, the hidden emotions gain strength and erupt as anxiety during moments of stress or vulnerability. Understanding this isn't self-pity, it's emotional maturity. And the journey of healing can only begin when we stop judging ourselves for feeling anxious and start listening to what it truly means. So, the next time you catch yourself drowning in anxiety, remember this: you're not weak, you're human. And like every human, you carry within you a rich tapestry of experiences, many of which were forced into the shadows. Each wave of anxiety is an invitation. Uncomfortable? Yes, but priceless. To reconnect with those forgotten parts. The path won't be easy, but it will be deeply transformative. And once we begin to understand how repression has shaped our inner world, a powerful question naturally arises. Where exactly do these repressions come from? That's the next layer we'll explore. The roots of repression run deeper than most people realize. From a very young age, we learn which emotions are acceptable and which are not. It starts subtly. A disapproving glance from a parent when you express anger, a teacher dismissing your tears, a friend teasing you for being too sensitive. Over time, the message becomes clear. Certain feelings are not safe to show. And so, we adapt. We push those emotions down, lock them away, hoping they'll simply disappear. But as Jung warned, the unconscious does not forget. What is denied does not die. It festers. And the more we repress, the more we unknowingly fuel the fire of anxiety later in life. Imagine a young girl who loved to dance to express joy freely, but each time she danced too wildly or laughed too loudly, her parents scolded her. Stop being so silly. Behave. Gradually, she learned to hold back her joy, to shrink her presence. Fast forward 20 years. She's a professional, outwardly composed, but plagued by a gnawing sense of restlessness and chronic anxiety. Why? Because her authentic impulses, her natural expressions, were repressed. That joy, now trapped in the shadow, morphs into unease, an internal tension that no amount of external success can soothe. This process of repression often happens so early and so unconsciously that by adulthood, we no longer recognize the source of our anxiety. We just feel it, as insomnia, as racing thoughts, as a body that can't relax. Jung taught that these symptoms are not random. They are signals from the psyche. The parts of us that were banished to the shadow are constantly trying to return to consciousness. But because we've been conditioned to avoid discomfort, we resist. And resistance amplifies anxiety. It's like trying to hold a beach ball underwater. The harder you push, the more forcefully it will pop back up. Understanding this dynamic is liberating. It means that your anxiety is not a mysterious curse. It's a map pointing to unresolved wounds and unmet needs. The question is, are you willing to follow it? Many people aren't, because facing repressed material can be painful. But as Jung wisely said, one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. True healing begins when we dare to explore that darkness, when we stop running from it and start listening. And here's where things get even more fascinating. Once we recognize that repression fuels anxiety, we can begin to see another layer beneath it all. The shadow itself. The vast, hidden realm of the psyche that silently shapes our thoughts, behaviors, and emotions. It's within the shadow that our deepest repressions reside. And understanding how the shadow feeds your anxiety is the next crucial step on this journey. Most people have no idea how much their shadow drives their everyday life, and even less how it silently fuels their anxiety. Jung described the shadow as the hidden part of the psyche, the collection of traits, emotions, and impulses we've disowned or rejected. But the shadow isn't dormant. On the contrary, it's incredibly active beneath the surface, shaping your thoughts, sabotaging relationships, and triggering intense emotional reactions. When we repress parts of ourselves, they don't disappear. They gather strength in the shadow, and one of the ways they surface is through anxiety. This is why so many people say, "I don't know why I feel this way." They're unaware that their own repression is leaking through the cracks of their consciousness. Let's say someone was taught that expressing anger is unacceptable. Over the years, they suppress it so deeply that they convince themselves they're just a calm person. But life is messy. In small, everyday moments, a partner's offhand comment, a colleague's criticism, that buried anger stirs. But since it has no healthy outlet, it emerges as physical tension, stomach knots, racing thoughts, classic symptoms of anxiety. In this case, anxiety isn't weakness. It's repressed rage that has been disowned for so long that it can no longer be ignored. The same pattern applies to fear, shame, grief, even joy, anything you've pushed into the shadow. One of the most insidious effects of the shadow is that it keeps us stuck in loops of self-sabotage. Because what's hidden controls us far more than what's conscious. You may find yourself avoiding opportunities, clinging to unhealthy relationships, or endlessly procrastinating, all driven by unconscious repression. And the resulting anxiety only reinforces the cycle. The more anxious you feel, the more you try to control life, and the more the shadow pushes back. It's a losing battle unless you change your approach. Jung emphasized that making the shadow conscious is the key to breaking this cycle. Consider this. Many high achievers struggle with relentless anxiety precisely because their drive for perfection stems from shadow material. Deep down, they may carry a repressed sense of unworthiness, a belief they are not good enough unless they constantly prove their value. Outwardly, they look successful. Inwardly, they are exhausted, trapped in a pattern where no achievement ever brings inner peace. The shadow whispers, "You're still not enough," and anxiety becomes a constant companion. Recognizing this dynamic is the first step toward true healing. Once you begin to see how your shadow shapes your anxiety, a new question arises. How do you identify which repressions are driving your suffering? This is where the journey gets deeply personal and profoundly transformative. Because until you bring those repressions into the light, they will continue to shape your life from the shadows. And that's exactly what we'll explore next. Identifying the repressions that fuel your anxiety can feel like trying to see in the dark. After all, these parts of you were hidden away for a reason, often very early in life. But the clues are always there, waiting for those willing to look. Jung taught that the unconscious constantly seeks expression. So when you pay close attention to your emotions, your body, and your patterns, the shadow begins to reveal itself. Start by observing your strongest reactions. Moments when your response seems out of proportion. Sudden anger, irrational fear, overwhelming guilt. These are signposts pointing to repressed material struggling to surface. One practical way to explore this is through journaling. When you notice anxiety flaring up, ask yourself, what am I feeling right now? What thoughts or memories come with this feeling? Write without judgment. You may uncover layers of emotion, sadness beneath irritation, fear beneath frustration. Another powerful tool is dream work. Jung considered dreams a direct line to the unconscious. Pay attention to recurring symbols, scenarios that evoke strong feelings. Often, they reflect aspects of your shadow-seeking integration. For example, dreaming of being chased might point to repressed fears you've avoided facing in waking life. Your body also holds valuable wisdom. Chronic tension, digestive issues, headaches. These can be physical manifestations of repression. Notice where your body tightens when anxiety arises. Is it your chest, your stomach, your throat? These signals often correspond to the emotions you've learned to suppress. For instance, a tight throat might indicate unspoken grief or anger. By bringing mindful awareness to these sensations, you begin to create space for healing. Techniques like somatic therapy and breath work can help you reconnect with these trapped energies and allow them to move through you. Relationships are another mirror for your shadow. Pay attention to the traits in others that trigger you the most. Often what you reject in others reflects what you've repressed in yourself. If someone's assertiveness enrages you, it may be because you've buried your own assertiveness out of fear or shame. Similarly, excessive people-pleasing can indicate repressed anger or a deep-seated belief that your needs don't matter. Becoming curious about these patterns, rather than judging them, opens the door to profound self-discovery and a gradual reduction in anxiety. The journey of identifying your repressions is not about blame. It's about reclaiming lost parts of yourself. Each layer you uncover brings you closer to wholeness, and as you make the unconscious conscious, you'll notice subtle shifts, a lighter heart, calmer thoughts, moments of unexpected inner peace. But recognizing repression is only the beginning. The next, and perhaps most courageous step, is to actively engage in the process of healing, to integrate your shadow and liberate yourself from the grip of anxiety. And that's where we'll turn next. Once you've begun to identify the repressions driving your anxiety, the real work begins, healing. But let's be honest, integrating the shadow is not for the faint of heart. It requires courage, patience, and compassion for yourself. Jung said, "There is no coming to consciousness without pain." The goal isn't to eliminate uncomfortable emotions, but to create space for them, to welcome them as part of your human experience. The first step is cultivating self-awareness. Regular practices like meditation, journaling, or therapy help you stay connected to your inner world. When anxiety arises, instead of reacting or suppressing it, pause and ask, "What is this feeling trying to tell me?" This simple act of inquiry begins the process of integration. One powerful tool is inner dialogue. Jung encouraged dialoguing with parts of the psyche, giving voice to repressed emotions or traits. You can do this in writing or visualization. For example, if you uncover repressed anger, imagine sitting across from it. Ask why it's there, what it needs from you. This process transforms the emotion from a formless threat into a part of yourself you can understand and integrate. Over time, this reduces the charge behind your anxiety, as the shadow loses its grip on your unconscious mind. Another key element is self-compassion. Many people feel shame when they begin this work. Shame for the emotions they find, for the mistakes they've made, for the ways they've coped. But here's the truth. You did the best you could with what you knew. Repression was a survival strategy, not a flaw. Approaching your shadow with harsh judgment only deepens the split. Instead, practice radical acceptance. Remind yourself daily, I am human. I carry light and darkness. Both deserve to be seen. This attitude fosters a deep sense of inner peace and softens the intensity of anxiety over time. It's also essential to bring the body into the process. Emotions live in the body as much as in the mind. Techniques like somatic experiencing, yoga, and breathwork help release the physical residue of repression. When practiced regularly, they can create profound shifts, a sense of openness, vitality, and groundedness that directly counteracts chronic anxiety. Simple daily practices, like deep belly breathing for 5 minutes or mindful walking, can support this release and foster a stronger connection to your authentic self. Finally, remember that healing is a journey, not a destination. Some layers of the shadow may take years to fully integrate, and that's okay. The key is consistent engagement with the process. Over time, you'll notice that anxiety becomes less overwhelming, less frequent. In its place, you'll find increasing moments of clarity, strength, and inner peace. And as this transformation unfolds, it naturally raises deeper questions about your path forward, about how to live a life more aligned with your true self, free from the silent chains of repression. But that reflection is one I'll invite you into very soon. Now you know the truth. Your anxiety is not a sign of weakness. It's a doorway to healing. It's a call to face what has long been buried in your shadow, to bring compassion and light to parts of yourself you were taught to reject. The question is, what will you do with this understanding? Will you continue to run from your anxiety, masking the symptoms and deepening the cycle of repression? Or will you choose the courageous path of integration, the path that leads to authentic freedom and lasting inner peace? Look back on your own life. What patterns keep repeating? What emotions do you instinctively avoid? What does your body tell you when you're most anxious? These are not random experiences. They are clues waiting to be explored. And the journey doesn't have to be walked alone. Every insight you gain brings you closer to your true self, the self beyond fear, beyond shame, beyond the unconscious. chains you've carried for so long. So I invite you now, start small. Journal about your strongest emotional reactions this week. Pay attention to your dreams. Notice the physical sensations that arise when anxiety strikes. Each of these steps is a powerful act of reclaiming your wholeness. The work is not easy, but neither is the life of endless repression and fear. And trust me, what awaits you on the other side is worth every step. Now, I want to hear from you. What part of today's message resonated most with you? Have you noticed patterns of repression fueling your own anxiety? Share your thoughts in the comments. Your insights may inspire others on the same path. And if this journey speaks to you, don't walk it alone. Subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications so you never miss another guide like this one. Together, we'll keep shining light into the shadow and step by step, move toward true inner peace.